Okay, UEFA are threatening to ban England from Euro 2028, a tournament they are co-hosting alongside Scotland, Wales, Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland. Now, this is all to do with the government legislation being put forward by the current government, as well as previous legislation that was on the legislative agenda under the previous government about an independent footballing regulator. UEFA are not going to ban England from co-hosting. They're not. This is some Premier League clubs have gone to UEFA crying about a regulator that is going to come. It's going to happen. The clubs in question were the six clubs involved in the European Super League a few years back. So that's Arsenal, Tottenham, Man City, Man United, Chelsea, and Liverpool. They're basically six very unpopular clubs. When I do videos on those clubs, those videos actually don't do particularly well. But when I do videos on the other clubs in English football, when I'm watching an FA Cup game or a European game, if a club's made a European final or whatever, or a club history, those videos do really, really, really well. When I do videos on these six clubs, the view counts are actually less because fans of the other clubs feel that they're not given a fair crack in the media. They're not given, they get ignored. They feel they're ignored. They feel there's a bias against them in the media, and a variety of other things. And it's true. It's true. However, regardless of what you think of these clubs, not all of them agree with this independent footballing regulator. There is a division between Premier League clubs and the Football League over a variety of issues that we've seen in recent years. Now, the calls for this independent regulator have been going a lot longer before Boris Johnson introduced the white paper about 4 years ago, during COVID, or just before COVID, actually. The issues had been there for some time, and high-profile ex-players like Gary Neville and Bernstein, the former FA chair, have been calling for reform of the government system of club football and football in this country for some time. And there's also been calls to make UEFA more accountable and more transparent. So football and governments and sports governments in general, there's been a lot of calls for reforming of sports governance and the system transparency and where the money goes, because a lot of these organisations are meant to be not for profit, like UEFA. Do I think UEFA bans England from competing at the Euros and English clubs competing in European club competitions? No, it'd be far too damaging for UEFA because it would cost them a lot of money, and there would be a lot of backlash. Other clubs in Europe want to play these English clubs in Europe because it means revenue, it means better TV deals, and the Premier League, other than the Champions League, the Premier League is the most watched footballing competition in North America. It's big money. It's big money. And if that is put at risk for UEFA, that's a problem. The Euros is a big thing, and a lot of their viewers are now coming from the US and Canada. There's a lot of money there. If England aren't part of it, viewership figures are ironically down. So when England didn't qualify for Euro 2008, viewership figures for that tournament were actually down worldwide. It is a difficult one. It's the same with USA 94. Viewership figures were high, and they were the highest ever because it was in the US. However, they were lower than predicted because England did not participate. So UEFA, I don't think will ban England. I think this is some English clubs. We know who they are. The Super League clubs. Your big six: Tottenham, Arsenal, Chelsea, Man United, Man City and Liverpool, and a few others in the Premier League aren't overly keen on this independent regulator, even though we are seeing with the current financial fair play regulations that UEFA are basically forcing upon leagues across Europe, clubs are having to cut their expenditure. And some clubs that are part of this group of six, Man United, are announcing record losses. They're bleeding money. And this is under the current regulatory system. And we know that the current regulatory system, it's a pick and mix of what clubs you punish. Because technically Man United should be punished the same way Everton have been punished. They're not going to be. Because it would be a bad look for the Premier League. Man City, with their 115 charges, their case opens tomorrow. They've been found guilty twice. They got off on a reduced punishment on a technicality. A technicality that the Premier League doesn't have that UEFA did have. So we know they're guilty. And Man City fans can go, there's an agenda against them. No, there's corruption allegations and the Premier League's under pressure as the governing body in this instance, as it's a Premier League club, to punish them. And this is where a lot of fans are going, this is why we need an independent regulator, because they're trying to keep it in-house. So Everton have been punished in one way, Nottingham Forest. Leicester City, however, their punishment was less. Man United have also announced profits or losses in regards to profit loss rule for 3 consecutive years, actually. And that means they've done exactly the same as Everton. That should mean a points deduction, surely. But this is where fans want that independent regulator. UEFA's statement says they don't want political interference in the professional game. Ironically, in order for the UK and Ireland to get this co-host this tournament, the 4 home nations plus the Republic of Ireland, they needed both governments to back the bid process and set aside funds for infrastructure upgrades to stadiums, roads, railways, bus routes, hotels, and the organising committee. There needs to be infrastructure spending, and the British government and the Irish government, plus the devolved governments within the UK, backed the bid. There needs to be government money involved in hosting the tournament. So that defeats UEFA's argument of lack of government. We need to keep politics out of the sport. Yet UEFA were happy to ban Russia and Belarus from qualifying or participating in UEFA tournaments. So that's swings and roundabouts. The irony there. But do I think UEFA ban England? No. Do I think the English clubs or those that play in, because Swansea and Cardiff and Wrexham, for example, could hypothetically between now and 2028, qualify for a European competition? There's nothing to say they won't make the Premier League and win a trophy. Will I think those clubs in the English league system get barred from European competition? No. Do I think the Welsh and Scottish and Northern Irish clubs also potentially get blocked from European club competition? No. No. This is purely a handful of clubs, we know who they are, trying to put pressure on the British government via UEFA to water down the regulatory proposals they are putting for Parliament. However, there is actually a lot of political consensus for this, so I can't see how this is going to work. I can see this becoming law. I can see it becoming legislation very, very soon. There's a lot of... It's basically the clubs trying to retain their self-serving, self-regulatory system, which is clearly not working. That's what it is. And we'll see what happens. I can't see UEFA following through this because it'd be too damaging for UEFA, considering the amount they knew that this legislation was already on the table when the bid was in place. When the bid was in play, this legislation had already been discussed by the previous government, so we knew it already existed. It's only now they're suddenly coming out. Now, this is clubs putting pressure on UEFA to put pressure on the British government. It's a desperate play by a desperate organisation that's already got to deal with the Man City situation. And we know that the government-owned companies are buying football clubs. There is political involvement in football with Man City, with Newcastle, for example, where nation states are buying football clubs, with PSG. So clubs across Europe have, international government involvement from some pretty undesirable regimes. So it's all swings and roundabouts. We'll see what happens. Maybe the government waters down some of its legislation, but there seems to be political consensus, and the majority of fans want it. It's club owners that don't. And from what I can gather, a lot of these clubs are losing money still under the new spending rules that have been brought in. So things aren't great behind the scenes, and I don't really know where we stand. But I think that the sport is on a precipice. But that's me. That's enough from me for now. Place your thoughts on the situation below, and I'll have some more content for you guys very, very soon.